All right, everybody, welcome. My name is Jen Appleberry with Appleberry's Attic Craft Studio, and today we're going to show you how to get acrylic paint to look like stain, and we're going to talk about a couple different ways to mix paint to get it to look like that and get it to be that right desired color. So we're going to jump right in on this tutorial because it's super easy, super fun. If you're doing this for any project or to make a sign, this is the tips and tricks you're going to need to know. So first and foremost, what you do to get acrylic paint to look like stain, the secret is just water, right? People always ask me, what did you do to get that board to look like it's been stained? Well, the secret is water, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start off with the traditional brown acrylic paint. Today I'm using Apple Barrel Burnt Umber. That's probably my favorite brand, favorite brown. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just add a splash of water, okay? What we're trying to do is we're trying to cut down that thick pastiness of paint, and we're trying to get it to be a little bit more fluid, so it's got more motion as we put that paint on the board. People always ask me, how much water should I put into my cup, Jen? Well, that obviously depends on how much paint you put, but I would say it's definitely not like a quick little sip, but it's totally not a guzzle. So what you're gonna wanna do is add just enough paint to get this consistency. Do we kind of see that? It's just a nice, fluid, thin paint that's gonna really work like stain, okay? So I've got my brown, I've got my water, and now what you're gonna see me do is working with the grain of the board, I'm gonna go ahead and take my sponge and just really start to glide that painted water over my surface, okay? Grab a new brush. I think this one has some clumps. Okay? So what you're seeing me do is really just glide that, we'll call it stain, because it really is looking like stain. I'm kind of working with the side of my brush. You'll also notice that I'm using the least amount of paint possible. One thing that happens very quickly is that people tend to put way too much paint on their board, and then it just looks oversaturated and takes forever to dry. Another thing that I always do is when I'm painting to get a stain look, I always make sure that I have wet wipes or some sort of paper towel on hand. Because what happens is if you get too much paint or you get it looking too paint-y, if that's even a word, what I do is I take my paper towel and you can wipe off, look at that. You can wipe off the excess and get it to look a little bit more like a stained board. Okay, I'm gonna add a little bit more to this section here, but you guys get the drift. Already, just adding water to this brown paint has it looking so good. Look at that. Now the beauty of this is that it's going to dry very quickly, but it also is going to look a little bit more stained, and then your sticker or your stencil is going to dry to it really, or adhere to it really nicely. Okay, so this is just traditional brown acrylic paint with water. Now that we know this concept, let's move on to another fun option, okay? So a lot of times when we're working with stain, it's one of those guessing games, right? You can't ever find a good gray stain, you can't find a good barn lumber look. And so with mixing acrylic paint with water, you can get just that desired color that you're looking for. You can get that brown and gray mixture to really look like a barn lumber, okay? So to do that, I would just take brown paint, which I'm going to use my paint that I've got, and I'm gonna add a little bit of gray. So now we're gonna talk about mixing paint, okay? And I always say add a couple drops to start because you can always add more, but you certainly can't take it out, okay? So I've added some gray paint to my brown. I think I'm gonna do a little bit more. And again, this is just Apple Barrel Pewter Gray. So just go ahead and choose, your favorite gray of choice. Add it into that brown. Now because I've added more paint, you're gonna see me add just a quick little splash of water. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna try it out on our board. Again, getting it to look like stain. Now, when I talk about doing signs at our studio here in Anoka, I always tell people if this is the front of your board, maybe you want to try the back of your board and try a little bit on here before you commit to the full face, okay? So I've tried some on the back of my board. In my opinion, that's not gray enough. I'd like it to be a little bit more gray, a little bit more barn lumber. So I'm going to add more gray, mix it together, and then we can continue. okay? When it comes to stain, I feel like it really is a guessing game. You just dunk that cloth into that stain can and then pray to Jesus that it looks like the color you want, and secret, it never is. So that's why I must have like control issues, I think, because that's why I love controlling with paint. I can get almost to that exact hue that I want just by adding the right mixture of paint and water. Let's add a little bit more gray and then we're gonna go for it, okay? So I've got my brown and gray paint with my splash of water because I'm getting it to look like stain, and now we're committing to the front. Same steps as before, but now you're gonna see that gorgeous farmhouse, barn lumber color really start to take shape and look like stain. Can you all believe that? This is acrylic paint. Now again, look at that. The technique of wiping it off really gives you that look that you're going for. So if you're painting a sign or painting a different decor piece in your home, might I suggest adding a little bit of water to your paint, keeping those wet wipes and paper towels on hand, and then wiping off the excess, getting all that wood grain to go through. Now, if you're making a sign, so let's say you picked up a sign at Appleberry's Attic and you're making this at home, I would always suggest painting the surface of your board and then all four sides of your board. That's gonna give you a nice finished look. Now, let's move on. So here is a brown with gray. I'm gonna show that example, and you can see the difference. Really, look at that. Brown and then brown with gray. Pretty awesome, right? Now we know that the same concept would apply is if we wanted to add a darker contrast. So if we were just doing plain brown, but we said, gosh, Jen, I'd like a stain that's a little bit darker, maybe like a dark, rich walnut. Well, great. To your brown paint, I would suggest adding a little bit of black. And again, add and mix until you get that right exact color, and then go from there. Black also looks gorgeous when it's watered down. I really haven't found a color of acrylic paint that I don't like with water. The only one that I don't ever use water with would be white, but all the other colors look great when they're watered down. Same thing with a navy. Navy is a nice neutral color as well if you want to add a pop to your home. The last board that I'm going to show you in this tutorial is how to make more of a natural looking stain. Okay, so let me clean up my mess, because that's one thing that people often ask me is, well, what if I don't want brown? What if I'm not looking for like a dark brown or a gray stain? Again, you could do gray paint and add water and it would look stunning. But if you want more of a traditional looking wood, then I would suggest going with a lighter brown. So today I'm going to be working with like a coffee colored acrylic paint. It's very tan in color. You can see from here. I'm going to lighten it down with either a khaki or a cream. And then what I'm going to do is add that water, and you're going to see that this paint mixture is really going to take on the look of a natural stain, okay? So you saw me add water because remember, again, in the beginning of this tutorial, we talked about how the secret to getting acrylic paint to look like stain is just by adding water, okay? So I've got a nice fluid motion to my paint. It's looking nice and stainy. I'm gonna grab my little towel here and dampen off that excess. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna work with the grain of that wood, okay? Add a little bit, look at that. And now wipe it off. You guys, it gets me excited every single time I do it, and yet I've done it 1,000 times. Look at that. This and this are very similar in color. You're getting a gorgeous natural looking stain, and you're just using paint. Again, I love being able to control that exact hue. So if you're making a project at home and you've got a couple different wood tones in your house that you're trying to match, might I encourage you, instead of cracking open that stain can, go ahead and work with acrylic paint and water. We all know that stain, it is so smelly. It takes 24 hours to dry, and honestly, when I'm ready to craft, ain't nobody got time for that. I don't want to wait 24 hours for my stain to dry. So I love working with acrylic paint and water. This, my friends, is stunning. So whether you do this for a sign or for a decor piece in your home, these are some tricks and tips that you're going to be able to use to make gorgeous projects. So thank you for watching this tutorial today. We can't wait to craft with you. If you want to go ahead and get some DIY to your door, Appleberry's Attic does do a box where we ship it on the 15th. You can check out our website for more. Thanks for joining me.